I would like to introduce a short introduction to our bread demonstrator, our guest, very special guest. Her name is Patricia LaVanture, and she is a health educator and events coordinator. She comes all the way and she lives near South Haven. So I am looking forward to you actually get two bread recipes tonight. So I will give the time now to Ms. Patricia. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It's great to see all of you, and it's just wonderful to be here. I'm filling in for Rose, so this is going to be kind of an experience where we are walking through this together, because normally when I do bread demos, I use my recipes, but I'm going to be using Rose's recipes just like you're going to at home for the first time. So it's going to be really fun, and I'm just really glad to see all of you here. We're going to be talking about whole wheat bread, and I have here an enlarged kernel of wheat so that you can see what it looks like on the inside. And the outer part of your little wheat berry, by the way, these wheat berries will last a long, long time until you grind them. Once you grind them and it turns into flour, now the air is reaching all these components of the inside kernels of wheat, and it can begin to deteriorate, it can go rancid, but those wheat berries can last a long, long time. In fact, they've been found in pyramids and ground up and turned into flour. So if you do have a place where you can store wheat berries and you have a way to grind the wheat, it's a great way to go, because you have a really fresh flavor in your breads when you make it that way. So the outer layer is your bran, and underneath your bran, you've got your middlings. And do you know where that part goes? The middlings go to the animals, because the farmers know where all the good nutrition is, and it's just under the bran, because your bran is mostly fiber, and most of that nutrition is just under the bran. And all that gets shaved off in the refining process. If you want to come up here later, in fact, maybe I'll pass this around, and you can see all the different things that are removed from the wheat in order to get down to the white flour. So then, once you get that bran and middling shaved off, you get down to the starch. Now the starch isn't all that bad. It's just lacking the whole grain, but there's some nutrition in there, and there's also something called gluten. Now, if you are gluten intolerant, by all means, you shouldn't have gluten. But for the average person, and they don't have any gluten insensitivities, it's actually a good thing to incorporate into your diet. And gluten has something called tryptophan, which is really good for the brain. It helps fight depression. And so that's what's in the middle of your wheat, along with that starch. And down here you have that precious wheat germ. This is like the heart of the kernel. If you look at a bean, or how about a peanut? Did you ever break a peanut open and you see that little nub? That's the germ. That's where that miracle takes place, where under the right conditions it will sprout and give life. So it's really fun to see the inside of seeds and kernels, because all those components are there to bring us good health, good nutrition, and good fiber. So as Melody said, we're going to make two kinds of bread. We're going to make whole wheat bread by hand, and then for those of you that don't want to bother with kneading, we will show you how to make a really easy and quick focaccia bread. So you've got your recipes. Did you all get one? Okay, what I'm going to be demonstrating up front is half of what is on your recipe. So we're going to do the basic bread first, and then we will move on to the focaccia. So we're going to start out by mixing. Your recipe says 6 cups of warm water. I'm using 3, so everything is halved for the sake of the demonstration. So we've got the 3 cups of warm water, and if I was using honey, I would put the honey in at this point, because you want all your liquid ingredients in there first. And then these are the flax seeds loaded with omega-3 fats, tons of fiber. These flax seeds were mixed with just a little water. So the flax seeds soften. You can also use ground flax seed. And we're going to go ahead and put that in the water. That makes like an eggy texture. And I love these bread whisks. They might have these at Apple Valley. I'm not sure, but they come in large and small sizes, and I use these a lot at home because when you're mixing a soft dough, the dough will just slide off, and it doesn't stick. It's like great. So we're going to go ahead now and mix the water with the flax seeds, honey if you're using honey, but Rose measured out for me some organic natural sugar crystals, and I'll be using those. In fact, I'll go ahead and add those now so that can begin to dissolve. And by the way, you see how I have everything measured out? That makes cooking so much fun. And the French have a term called mise en place. Have any of you ever heard that? Are any of you French? Mise en place, if you're a chef, you know all about mise en place because it's one of the things you're taught when you go to school. And that means everything in place. So you can have as much fun at home as I'm having here by just measuring out all of your ingredients in advance. And you know, I do that not every time, but when I do it, you know, it makes you feel like a real professional chef because that is what they do. All right, so we've got our wet ingredients mixed. Now we're going to add the dry ingredients after they're mixed. Actually, I was supposed to do that first, but I'll just use this bowl over here, and then we're going to add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients. So again, everything's cut in half. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 3 cups of whole wheat flour. And Dan, is this ground? Do you grind your own berries? Okay, so this is a store-bought flour. If you grind your own berries, the flour is going to be a lot moister, so you might have to adjust the water content. In other words, if you're using freshly ground flour, you might need less water in the overall recipe. Okay, so we've got 3 cups there of the whole wheat, and this is a nice looking unbleached flour. I always like to use unbleached instead of bleached. And these tools work really great to just kind of whisk the flour, and I always do this before measuring. So we're gonna measure out, and notice here on your recipe it says 6+ cups of white flour. And the reason why it says that is because you're gonna add more as you need, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put in 1, and then I'm gonna put in 2, and just to be on the conservative side, because you never really know, there's many factors when you make bread. The temperature of the air, the humidity of the air. And so you want to go easy because your dough may end up too dry or too moist, and then you adjust as you go. So I'm going to add about 2.5 cups of the unbleached. And the rest of the dry ingredients are the old-fashioned rolled oats, and if you don't have those, you can certainly use the quick rolled oats as well. But these are the regular rolled oats, and we're putting in 1 tablespoon of salt, and this is really pretty pink salt, pink sea salt. I love it. I usually use that in my shaker at home just because it's so pretty. I don't have the gluten flour that it calls for, but at home you would go ahead and add 1 tablespoon of gluten flour. If you don't have it, no big deal. The bread's still going to turn out. And then I'm adding 1 tablespoon of quick rapid rise yeast, and you don't have to pre-soak that. Like years ago, you had to soak your yeast with a little sugar in the warm water and then wait for it to get bubbly and then add that to your bread. So you can totally skip that. And we're going to mix the dry ingredients. Then we're going to add it to the wet ingredients, and then we're going to turn it out and knead, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Do we have any professional bread makers here? Any of you have been making bread for years and years? I see a few hands. Some guys. Yay. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and we're adding the dry to the wet. Because this is not my recipe, I'm just going to kind of go easy here, okay? Because I don't want it to be too stiff. You can see what it looks like. And it doesn't hurt to add it gradually because that does help the wet ingredients to mix in gradually. as you can see, this is a really nice tool. So if anybody wants to buy a Valentine's gift or anything like that, they're just great. I'm trying to remember if I saw them at Apple Valley or not, but you can order them online. They're actually artisan bread hooks. So if you ever have an artisan class, which is another kind of bread making, you definitely are at an advantage if you have one of these. Okay. You know, I've always loved making whole wheat bread, and when I was a teenager, it was my job when I got home to make dinner for our family of 6. Because by the time I got into high school, my mom started working part-time, and it was great. Like back then, they wouldn't always let you get in and make a mess like moms do now. And I remember as a kid, I would just stand there looking over the kitchen countertop. I could not wait to get in there and get my hands on everything. And of course, my mom waited, I guess, to some miracle age when I wasn't going to make a mess. I don't know what she was thinking, but once I got in the kitchen, you could not get me out, and I had so much fun. So when I ended up having to make dinner for our whole family when I got home from school, I was in my glory, but my mom just would shake her head. She didn't know what to do with me, because by then, people were starting to get into healthy eating. And she would just roll her eyes. She never knew what I would come up with. But you know, my goal ever since has been to make healthy food that looks good, tastes good, and is good for you. Don't you think we could have all of those? Why not? Okay, so now we're going to do the kneading. And I don't know how this is going to work because of this nice tablecloth. So we're going to try doing it on a glass cutting board. We'll see if it works. Of course, at home, you just want to do it right on your countertop. That's the best place to do it. And I'm going to put a little flour, not too much, on the board. We'll see how this works, okay? And then we're going to sprinkle a little on the dough. And if you have one of these, it's really great because I like to sprinkle a little flour all around the edges. This is especially true when you're working with your artisan breads. And then you just push that dough down, and it comes out really easy because that flour that you sprinkle along the edge now is just putting a light coating on the dough so that it all comes out just really easy. How about that? Okay, where can I put this so it's out of the way? All right, so now we're going to knead. And it's really easy, and it's really fun, and it's very therapeutic. Just you can put music on. You want to knead this for about 10 minutes. So turn it a quarter of a turn, and you're going to lift from the bottom, fold it towards you, and push. Okay, as soon as your hands start to get sticky, you're going to add just a little more flour. So turn a quarter of a turn, pull it towards you, and push with the heels of your hands, okay? Like sometimes people are like, I can't get it, I can't get it. Well, they're kind of pushing down, and you've got to get this roll, okay, which is a lot easier on a countertop, but I'm going to do my best. And I can't get the push and roll as well, just because I don't want this board to go flying, but we're going to do our best here. So you just want to do this for about 10 minutes. You want to keep your dough as soft as you can, because the softer the dough, the moister your bread. And if you feel it sticking, you can just roll it like this, and it comes off pretty easy. So you don't have to get your hands wet all the time. And normally, you would add flour on the underneath side as well. And because we're limited on time here, we're not going to need this the full 10 minutes. Because I think, Melody, how are we doing time-wise? We're okay? All right. So any questions on the kneading process? It's very easy and it's very fun. I'll tell you, it's like all the stress just kind of rolls off your shoulders. Yes?
What do you call the white thing you use to go around the bowl?
Oh, I think it's called a bowl scraper. Yeah, they're very inexpensive. A bowl scraper, and you want one that is flexible. Don't buy the ones that are stiff. You want it flexible so that you can bend it and really get the curve of the bowl. So see, it's very fun and it's very, very easy. And there's nothing like the smell of whole wheat bread baking in your oven. And boy, I tell you, when your family comes home, they're just so happy that you took the time to do this. And there's so much you can do. We don't have a lot of time today, but there's so much you can do once your dough is made. You can make rolls, you can make sweet rolls, you can make biscuits, you can make like when my kids were little, we would actually use this kind of bread dough and cut it with a donut cutter and bake it, and then put like a sweet icing on top. They never knew any better. They thought that was a great birthday donut, but all along it was like very healthy. And I love the flavor of whole wheat bread. Like there's just a richness and a fullness that you just cannot get from white flour exclusively. Now here we are using some unbleached because it does make a lighter bread, and especially for beginners, it helps to have, about half whole wheat and half unbleached. And then once you get really, really good at this, you can up the amount of whole wheat flour. Okay, so I think we will probably I think you can see where we're going. It's getting springy. It's getting rubbery. Now, think about a piece of chewing gum when you think about kneading bread, because what's happening is the gluten is being developed. That's the word. The gluten is being developed, and that's why it's getting springier and it's getting kind of elastic. And I tell people that gluten in the wheat, in the flour, is sort of like if you think about a piece of gum, okay? You put it in your mouth and you're gonna chew it. And sometimes it's even old and dry. But at least, if not dry, it's gonna be hard. And then as the moisture in your mouth mixes in with the gum gets soft and it gets elastic. And the longer you chew it, the more rubbery it gets, right? To the point where you're like, oh, get rid of this. Like, it's no fun after a while because it's just flavorless and rubbery. And that's kind of what's happening in your bread dough with the gluten. That gluten is getting more and more elastic and rubbery and stretchy. I was telling Dan when he called me this morning to see if I could come down. I said, I think I could make bread in my sleep. I've made a lot of bread in my lifetime, and it's still one of my favorite things to do. I hope y'all can get excited about it. And I love this recipe of Rose's because it's got the flaxseed in there. I'm looking at it and I can feel those, the rolled oats in there and the flaxseed, as well as the whole wheat flour. So it's great. So we're going to go ahead now and set this aside to rise.
Quick question.
Yes?
Is it a difference if you knead with hands or with bread machine?
You can do this with a bread machine.
There's no difference.
Yeah, there's no difference. Sometimes in a bread machine you can keep the dough a little bit softer, just because you're not touching it, and it kind of pulls away from the sides of the bowl. But this is a great recipe. You've got your flaxseed in there, which is almost like adding egg to the dough. So it has this incredible texture, and it works well by hand, or I'm sure by looking at it that it would work just fine in a machine. Just follow the recipe exactly the same. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
What happens if you overknead the bread? Overknead it?
It is, I would say, virtually impossible to overknead your bread by hand. You could do this for 10, 20, 30 minutes, and the bread's just going to get more and more beautiful. Now, in a machine, I have a Bosch machine, and with a certain kind of wheat, especially like we're using hard red wheat right now, we don't have time to go into all that, but there are different kinds of whole wheat. And the whole white wheat, it's lighter in color, it's lighter in flavor, and that you can overknead in a machine, especially if your water's hot. You will totally lose the gluten development. So if you ever have any questions, you can, about your bread making, if you're having trouble even with your boss, you can ask Dan for my number and you can give me a call and I can walk you through. I'm kind of a bread doctor and people have problems and they'll call me and I walk it through and kind of help assess what they need to do to get their bread to turn out. Okay, so here we go. We're going to set this aside. Whoops. Now at home you could clean the bowl out. You could coat it with a little olive oil if you wanted to. Which I can do that. I think this recipe was supposed to have olive oil in it. So you just do the same thing, just add the olive oil with the liquid and it'll turn out just great. Okay, so we're gonna set that in there, set it aside to rise, and I think she's got about 30 minutes for the rising time. And then you will shape it. If we have time, we're gonna go ahead and do that as well. The nice thing about these scrapers is they can clean off your counters really easy when you have a mess. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to mix the focaccia bread. As I said, this is a great bread for people that don't want to bother with kneading. You just literally mix it up and forget about it. I mean, how easy is that? So this is the focaccia bread, and we're going to start out with 2 1/8 cups of warm water. That's 2 cups, and if you have like a 2 tablespoon measure, that's what you want to do. 2 cups and 2 tablespoons of warm water. And then we're going to add the other ingredients. You can mix your dry ingredients first and then add the water. Let me just move this out of the way. So we're putting in 2 1/3 cups of the whole wheat flour. And since I didn't mix the dry ingredients all together, just kind of stir it as you go. If you want to skip that step where you're mixing the dry and the wet ingredients separately. So we're stirring in the whole wheat flour. 2 cups of white flour. I'm going to go easy on that and just kind of look at the texture. And I'm putting in 2 teaspoons again of the pink sea salt and only 1 teaspoon of yeast. That's a really neat thing about the focaccia bread. It doesn't take much yeast. Just a little tiny bit. You don't have to pre-soak that or anything. So at home you would do all those liquid ingredients first and then add the flour. Now, usually focaccia bread is a very, very, very soft dough. I didn't even put in all the flour. And you could actually keep it that soft. I'll put in a little more, because like I said, this is Rose's recipe, and I'm sure it turns out great the way she's got it. So once you get your dry ingredients mixed into the wet, you're going to set this aside to rise.
You don't need it?
You don't need it at all. You just stir in all your ingredients and you set it aside to rise. And that's the beauty of focaccia bread. I have lots of focaccia bread recipes. Some of them you mix it up and let it sit overnight. Some you let it sit for 24 hours. The recipe I believe here says you want to let this sit for about 2 hours at least. So if it goes for 4 hours, no worry. If it goes for 6 hours, no worry. This is like the perfect stress-free bread. So we would cover this and set it aside, and I'm going to show you what it looks like after it's risen. Okay, so here you go. It's very soft, as you can see. And I think Rose punches hers down. And I have some recipes that tell you not even to punch it down. So it's like it's a very forgiving dough. So I'm not really poking it, I'm just stirring it around, which is releasing some of those air bubbles in there. And then you take a nice skillet. This is a beautifully seasoned cast iron skillet. I am a strong advocate of cast iron cooking. It's great, and it really does become like nonstick. It's great. So you can take a pan like this or something similar. I even use old broiler pans when I make focaccia bread. I use that a lot. And you're going to put a little olive oil in there. Spread that around.
What can you use if you don't have cast iron?
You can use any pan. But an old broiler pan, that like thin pan that has a porcelain coating on it, and it browns really nice, that is great for focaccia bread. You know those old broiler pans, and they come with a lid, and a lot of people don't even use them. They just keep it under the oven. Those are great.
What about glass?
Pardon?
With glass?
You can use glass. It's not going to make as crisp of a crust as your cast iron or metal, but you certainly could. Just bake it on the lower part of your oven if you're using glass. So now we're going to sprinkle cornmeal, and I love cornmeal. I'm an absolute corn nut. So we're going to put cornmeal on the bottom, and then we're going to turn out this beautiful soft dough into the pan. And with focaccia bread, you want to drizzle the top with olive oil. You can brush it on, you can use your fingers. And that helps it to get nice and crispy in the oven. And then you take your fingers and you make dimples in the dough. You just kind of press down in.
What does that do?
It pushes the air bubbles up. Like when you push down with these holes in the dough, you'll see air bubbles coming up where there is dough, and it just makes a really nice texture. Okay, so let me see. No sink. I feel really bad using one of Rose's towels. Oh, here's a paper towel. Okay, this will be good. All right, so here's what this looks like, and you're going to set this aside for 30 minutes. You're going to preheat. Be sure to preheat your oven. You want to put focaccia bread in a nice hot oven, and you'll see that bubble up. You can also put toppings on there. You can put olives, Kalamata olives. You can put on there sun-dried tomatoes, a little bit of pizza sauce. You can turn that into a pizza if you want. Just don't put too many toppings on top. All right, so real quick, I'm going to show you how to shape the loaves, and I guess we'll do that here. We're going to imagine that this was rising long enough. Okay, and you can see it's just really nice. It's just a really nice dough. And there's a lot in cookbooks about how to shape your bread, and some of them are very complicated. They tell you to press it all and roll it, and there's just so many techniques, or roll it out flat, turn it this way, and then roll it. You don't have to do that. I'm going to show you a really simple way to shape this dough into a loaf. And we don't have time today to do other shapes, but just a basic loaf. So you're going to turn the cut side up and just do what we were doing before. Just knead it, quarter turn, pull the top towards you, quarter turn, pull the top towards you, push with the heel, let it roll, just like that. And actually, it just kind of forms itself into a loaf, as you can just kind of see. You want it nice and smooth. And so like the last time around, I'm going to kind of tuck it. Use your hands to tuck, 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 tuck. And then you're gonna drop that right into the pan. It's very easy. Very easy. And I like to put a little cornmeal in these pans too, but it's not in your recipe, so I'm gonna follow the recipe, but you can. So just lift it up, and it does not have to be pressed all the way to the edges of your pans at all. It can be just like this, because that's gonna fill the pan and rise up. So again, put your cut side up towards you, roll, quarter turn, fold towards you, push. Just like that. And I hope you're all going to go home and make bread now that you've seen how easy it is, and you'll get to taste it and see how wonderful it is. So then just kind of tuck it. You're going to end up with a shape like that. You can plop it right in your pan. Now I like to put toppings on my bread. That's optional. All you need is a little spray bottle. You can spray it with water. And there's lots of things that you can use for toppings. Now this dough is so pretty, even with no toppings. It's just really nice to see all the grains and the seeds. But just to give you an idea, you can use sesame seeds. You can use poppy seeds. You can put a little garlic salt on top. You can use bran flakes. I like bran flakes on the top of the bread. You can even use ground up oats in your nut and seed grinder. Just whiz them a little bit. You want them still coarse. Sprinkle some of those on top. I think that makes a really, really pretty loaf. And I usually spritz it with water again to help those little grains and seeds stick on top. You can actually even just mist the top of your dough, grab a little flour, the whole wheat flour, and just kind of spread it over the top. And if you want to, you can slit it. If you have a sharp, I kind of have a signature slash, because I love trees, so I kind of do a little bit of a tree. Whoops. So we'll go ahead and do that. You can also let it rise a little and then slit it too. So that concludes our bread demonstration. Do you have any questions before you get to sample your bread? Oh, thank you. And even when you come back and you're eating your samples, you can still pick my brain if you have any questions. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you go home and make bread. That'll make me happy.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Did you guys enjoy that? I think I'm gonna go straight home too.
Yes.
So my husband will be happy. But and for tonight and every night, every Sunday, I mean these next 2 Sundays as well, we will have samples. Do you want to sample what she just demonstrated for us? Yes, of course. And we have every topping that you could think of, I think. And please feel free to mingle. We have hot drinks and cold drinks. And Patricia here is she is here to, if you want to ask her more questions, clarify some things with her, and she welcomes that. Thank you so much, and please feel free to mingle and make friends. And I'm glad you guys are wearing your name tags. Thank you once again, and hope to see you next Sunday. Have a good night.